how's it going, you guys? I'm Landon and welcome back to another most amazing top 10 video. In my last video I asked you what is something you're obsessed with, and this is what you guys said. Today's comment question of the day is, do you believe in the death penalty? So getting right into it, this is the worst serial killers of all time, and some of these serial killers can be identified as mass murderers as well. So coming in at number 10, we have Dr. Harold Shipman. Yes, he's a doctor, and let's call him Dr. Insane. So he's a British doctor guilty of 15 murders. He was sentenced to life in prison, and the judge recommended that he never be released. Dr. Harold used lethal injections to kill his patients, and it went undetected for many years. A lot of people were concerned to why his death rates were so high. So he was caught and sentenced away. In 2004, he was found in his cell, hung. He took his own life the eve of his 58th birthday. The Sun newspaper came out with a front headline news saying, "Ship, ship, hooray!" So Ted Bundy, who is known as the Lady Killer, comes in at number 9. He was an American serial killer, rapist, and necrophilia. He assaulted and murdered women back in the 70s. He confessed to 30 murderers, but that number can be much higher. And he committed all these crimes when he was in his 20s and 30s. So the crimes took place in 9 states. Some of those states was Washington, Utah, Florida, Colorado, Oregon, Idaho, and California. So he was caught, but guess what? He escaped from jail. And then he was captured again, and the same thing, he escaped. The third time he was captured for good. It's like throwing a Pokeball and they get out. You gotta master ball it. So he was sentenced to death by electrocution. So now we have Gary Ridgway at number 8. He is an American serial killer that is known as the Green River Killer. He was initially convicted of 48 separate murders, but later he confessed to nearly twice that number. And this is all a part of his plea bargain to avoid the death penalty. Gary has become one of the most prolific American serial killers of all time. And this is to the amount of people he murdered. And this all took place in Washington State and California during the 80s and the 90s. Most of his victims were alleged to be prostitutes. While he was apprehended in 2001, he was sent to Washington State Penitentiary, where he was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Because of his story, he became famous in the film industries. There was movies after him. There was someone who played him in a comedy show called Reno 9/11. The Green River Killer was also mentioned on Everyone Hates Chris and Dexter. Well, who's worse than that? Coming in at number is Luis Garabato, aka La Vista, which means the Beast. So he's a Colombian rapist and child serial killer. In 1999, he admitted to rape, torture, and murder of 147 young boys. There was confirmed 138 of them, but investigators believe the number can toll 300. He is being dubbed the worst serial killer in history. So he was caught and sent off to prison for 835 years. But the maximum punishment in Colombia for murder is 30 years, so that's exactly what he received. There was a public outburst on the case. Everyone feels the sentence was not sufficient enough for the punishment that he committed. Some have argued he deserved either life in prison or the death penalty. So since this case in Colombia, they have increased the maximum penalty to 60 years in prison. Daniel Camargo, who's a very bad man, well, he's so bad that he comes in at number 6. And let's call him the Colombian Killer. It is believed that he raped about 150 young girls, and this all took place in the 70s and 80s. He was caught and put in prison in Georgiana, which is known as the Colombian Alcatraz. His sentencing, 16 years. I know. Mind blown. And that's because that was the maximum sentencing at that time in Ecuador. But Daniel was able to escape in a boat in 1984. Authorities assumed he was dead at sea. There was reports that came out saying that he was eaten by a shark. But as little time went by, he made it to land. And that's when he committed even more crimes. The crimes happened from 1984 to 1986. He committed a series of at least 54 rapes and murders. Well, Daniel was caught again, and he was killed in prison in 1994 by Luis Narvaez, which was the cousin of one of his victims. Now we have Pedro Rodriguez coming in to the 5 spot. He was a Brazilian serial killer nicknamed Killer Petey. Pedro started killing at a very young age. When he was 13 years old, he had his first urge to kill. He tried to kill his older cousin, but he survived. At 14 years old, he killed his first victim. And that was the vice mayor of Alfenas, where he lived, which is located in Brazil. And he killed him because, well, he fired his father. When he got older, the woman that he was living with was murdered, so he revenged her death. And he killed 10 people that was a part of a gang. Eventually, Pedro went on to kill somewhere between 70 to 100 people. He was caught and sentenced away to life. Now for the youngest mass murderer on the list, and I'm talking about 20-year-old Adam Lanza. And let's call him the Sandy Hook mass murderer. He was the kid responsible for 28 total deaths. 28 of them happened at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut, which is located in the States. Adam fatally shot 20 children to go along with 6 adult staff members. And just before he drove to school, he shot dead his mother. The incident was the deadliest mass shooting that took place at a high school or a grade school in the United States ever. Adam was never captured because he committed suicide at the scene, shooting himself in the head. H.H. Holmes comes in at number 3. And let's call him the hotel murderer. He designed and built a hotel specifically to be his murderer playhouse. These murders occurred during 1889 and 1896, and it took place in Chicago. It was confirmed that 27 people were murdered, but the number could go all the way up until 200. I mean, is this real life right now? How many people did he actually kill? So he was captured at the age of 35 years old and was hung to death. Geils Doynes comes in at number 2. And let's call him the grandfather of serial killers. He killed between 80 to 100 people. But some people claim these numbers can get all the way up to 600. Most of his victims was young boys with blonde hair and blue eyes. This guy is just so sick. He would take these victims and just let them bleed to death. He would actually get his servants to get their blood and just bathe them in the blood. He was having blood baths with all these little boys' blood. So he was captured and hung in 1440. Alright. Finally, we've made it to the number 1 spot, and we're talking about Pedro Alonso, better known as the monster of the Andreas. So he's a 66-year-old Colombian serial killer, and he was accused of raping and killing more than 300 girls across his native nation. Pedro knew in Ecuador he would be protected by its laws, and that's because the maximum sentencing is 16 years back then. It doesn't matter how many people you kill, if it's 1, if it's 1,000, you're not allowed to get consecutive sentencing. I think the country needs to fix those laws. That is ridiculous. So he was captured in 1980, and he led police to the graves of 59 of his victims in Ecuador. All these girls were aged 9 to 12 years old. 18 years after he was captured, he was released back into the public. He was released from a psychiatric hospital on good behavior, after initially being found insane. I think that's insane to let a free man out there who is deemed insane out in the public. Isn't he just gonna do this again? So his current whereabouts is unknown. So saying that kind of makes it hard to sleep at night, knowing that this guy's out there. But then again, he's 66 years old. This happened in the 80s. He would be somewhere in his 90s. I think if you can outwalk him, you're fine. Well, there you guys have it. That was the top 10 worst serial killers slash mass murderers of all time. Let me know if I missed anyone, if anyone should be on this top 10 list. I mean, there's just so many of them. There is probably a ton of people that I've missed. I apologize for that, but let me know in the comment section below. I'll see you all in the next video, which is next Friday. So let me know what you guys think of this video. I mean, mass murderers, I was reading all these things and I felt so sick to the stomach. These guys were capable of killing so many people. And a lot of these victims were little boys, little girls, and young women. It was so insane. And don't forget to let me know, do you guys believe in the death penalty? Well, there you guys have it. Don't forget to share us on social media. And if you guys want more videos, don't forget to subscribe. Okay, bye.